Welcome to On the Line. I'm Jenny Robb, and today we are continuing our featured guest, Frank Giampaolo, and his book, The Psychology of Tennis Parenting. And I'll do a quick intro to Frank, and then we will get into the book. Yeah. All right. Frank Giampaolo is a veteran author who has been coaching since 1987. Giampaolo's innovative approach has earned him numerous honors, included being named the 2001 USPTA Southern California Tennis Director of the Year and being voted a top teaching professional in consecutive years by Southern California Tennis and Golf magazine. Giampaolo founded the Mental Emotional Tennis Workshop in 2002. Since then, participants in the program have gone on to win more than 69 U.S. national titles. His students have won ATP and WTA Tour singles and doubles titles. Giampaolo pioneered the Tennis Parents Workshop in 1998 and has conducted seminars throughout the United States, Mexico, Australia, and Canada. Additionally, he hosts a blog site, tennisparentsolutions.com, and you can also find him on YouTube. Frank, thank you for being here. I'm so glad to see you.
Hi. You're looking good. I'm excited about the chat.
Yes. So the title of this chapter, we are now in chapter 6, is Thriving versus Suffering. And I love how you always start the chapter with a quote. And so this quote, don't be upset by the results you didn't get with the work you didn't do. That is fantastic. I just have been super excited to get into this. And so tell us a little bit, about chapter 6.
Well, chapter 6 does dive into more of the deep concepts in the tennis parent job descriptions. Mm-hmm. And it is basically, we're talking about the idea about preparing kids for pressure, mm-hmm. not just in a tennis match, but in life.
Correct.
And how character traits and a moral compass and some of these really terrific life skills help them organize their preparation. And then obviously, if their training and preparation is more customized and organized, they're going to get better results.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. So our first section, let me get my notes ready here. So you start with the suffering. Thought that was a good place to start, to go ahead, because I think that's probably where most people would want to start. If you're suffering, you're looking for a life jacket.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the suffering, you tell a story, and I just sort of made a quick note that this player wants rankings, rewards, prestige, fanfare, but rankings without the hard work aren't going to happen. Rewards without the struggle, not going to happen. Prestige without the process, not going to work. And fanfare versus the fight. And so I loved that story and kind of graphing it like that and saying, yeah, we all want these things, and parents want these things for their kids, and coaches want these for their players. And so I thought it was an interesting place to start, looking at the wants versus what you need to do to get that result.
Yeah.
And so you go on to say, a less physically gifted athlete with a better work ethic will outperform a more physically talented athlete with a weaker work ethic. There you go. You've seen it a million times. I mean, I immediately thought of way back when I was first, actually I met him when I was still playing. There were a pair of brothers, and the older brother was the one that was very studious, very hardworking, and really wanted to do all the things to get the results he wanted. And the younger brother was more of, kind of a playboy, so to speak, not, in a bad way, but less interested in doing the hard work, that's for sure. And this describes those two exactly, because the younger brother was so talented. He could walk out there and just play and do things, and his older brother always had to work. But the younger brother couldn't beat the older brother, even though the younger brother was the one that just had the talent out the wazoo. So let's talk a little bit about that as a starting point.
Yeah. Well, I obviously you've seen it too a million times, and there are a lot of naturally talented, gifted athletes out there. There's just tons of them, and so many never get the opportunity. They're just not born into that type of environment, that type of family. Right. And so your kids, if you're a parent watching, they're extremely lucky. But it is our job as tennis parents to get them to understand that just because they're physically gifted and they're athletic, it doesn't really guarantee success. It really doesn't. It's really about the discipline. And teaching discipline is one of the tennis parent, job descriptions.
That's a major one. I mean, discipline is a major skill.
It really is. And if the kids are not disciplined, if the kids are not working and suffering in practice, they're going to suffer in competition. So it's almost like they have to decide, do they want to be relaxed and do they want to just cruise during practice and not being that accountable? And it really is accountability, I think. Yep. But that's one of the keys we're trying to teach too from the tennis parent side is the accountability to go out there and do quality training that's customized to their development.
Yes.
Instead of just the quantity of hitting for a couple hours a day. Right. Just because they're hitting doesn't mean they're improving. And you know more than most people that if athletes are not growing and improving every week, they're not going to beat the better people that they want to beat.
That's right.
And so, growing and improving comes before beating the better people.
Yep.
And buying into that is not easy for a lot of kids.
No, it's not. And you follow that up by saying for all athletes, including the physically gifted, properly handling the pain of training determines success. Who you are is defined by how hard you are willing to work. So yeah, I like that the word willing is in there because there's an idea of able to and willing to. And are you able and willing to do the work? And so I just like the fact that the word willing is in there. So who you are is defined by how hard you are willing to work. So willing and able.
Yeah, willing and able. And we all know that it's part of human nature. We tend to always slide back to the comfort zone. And look, I know, and most people know that an analogy maybe is being on a good diet program. We know what to do.
That's right.
We just choose not to do it.
That's right.
So
that's and that's a personal one for me. It's like I'd love to lose a few pounds, but I'm surrounded by good food all the time, and it's discipline is tough.
Yeah, with your family being in the restaurant business, man,
making good, nutritious choices. I need to step up my discipline there. But so we go on to the next section, and it is titled Intangibles. And so another really fun word, you say intangibles are software skills directly related to the character traits of a future college team member. And that's a big statement. Like I like how you just immediately go right in and go, okay, we're talking about character traits. We're talking about the software, which we've already identified as, your mental and emotional aptitude. And then future college team member, you kind of go, oh, well, don't they just want me to be good?
Yeah,
want me to win? So you go on to say character traits are the core values and moral qualities present in an individual. Parents of college-bound athletes have very important jobs, education of positive character traits. So then we get into what those traits are. But tell us a little bit about how you developed this idea and this list of traits we're about to go through.
Well, one of the ways I really understand this process is, here in Southern Cal, I work with the SCTA, and which is the USTA branch, right? And we do a lot of high performance. And usually when we see players out there and they're really doing well, they're really buying into the process. They're doing these things that most kids are not willing to do.
Right.
And so, and then for me, then if I go and I do some other private sessions with kids that are not in the top 10, you see all these character traits and life skills. And often the idea is that parents just think that sports are going to teach these skills. And tennis doesn't really necessarily teach life skills and character traits. It exposes the bad ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we see things like grit, the kids that are able to really fight it out and figure out, problem solve, figure out how to win the match in the second set. That's what we see with the kids that are top 10. They're not more physically talented.
Right.
They don't have better strokes. The strokes are about the same as the kids ranked top 50.
Right.
So it's not strokes. It's actually the intangibles like grit, like this book we talked about a little bit in the book.
Yep. But grit is number one. If you have the book and want to follow along, it is on page 77.
Okay, good.
Right. So grit is the number one on your list. And so just like you were describing, you write courage and resolve, strength of character. And so, yep, that's good. A good one, obviously. In fact, there's a book just titled Grit, and I cannot remember the author right now, but it's a great book. So next we move on to motivation, the reason or reasons for attaining your goals. And we've talked some about, intrinsic, external versus internal, with your goal setting. So just like you were talking about the camps and workshops that you've been running, so the motivation that the kids are actually going to take the time to do it and they want to participate. So what led you to put motivation on this list?
Well, I think the athletes have to buy into their why, which is why are they working so hard as a kid?
Exactly.
And usually their long-term, their motivation, for most kids, they're saying, I want to play college tennis, whether D1, D2. I want to play college ball. I want to be like athletic royalty in college. They want to get the full ride scholarship, the free computers and books, and the free tutor that helps them and goes to classes for them. They want the free food and beverage credit card. They want the better dorms. They want the free physical PT training and massage. I mean, the list goes on and on about all the perks of being a college player. And I think if parents can take their kids to college matches and understand how incredibly great it is just to be a college athlete, that helps them find their motivation. It helps them find their why.
Yes, I could not agree more. And also, college matches, they're free to go to, and it doesn't have to be a huge, school. There are colleges with teams all over the place, and so it's not difficult to do that, to take your child, take your player to a college match and kind of see what the atmosphere is like. We've talked about expectations before, so you were just listing all the perks, which definitely help motivation. But yeah, I do think that seeing a match, it can make a tremendous difference. That's a great thing to do. So next, number 3 is trustworthiness. And you say the ability to be relied on as honest or truthful. Okay. Tell us about trustworthiness.
Well, that's one of the key concepts too that college coaches are looking for. They want they want honesty. They want a child to be an adult. They want them to be reliable. And they are helping, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, and their brains aren't even fully developed yet, really, but they want them to have all these skills. And the truth is, even 14-year-old kids, we have to train them like they're already 18. And we have to get them used to the concepts of that. They have to be mature enough to have all these life skills and character traits way before they even get the college scholarship offer.
That's right.
They're not going to learn this stuff after they get the scholarship. They have to have it before they get the offer.
And I think this is a theme that we've talked about all the time, but the idea of ownership. And so the idea of ownership and trustworthiness, it's like, can the parent trust that the child is going to be drinking water, hydrating? Can they trust their child to pack their bag? Can they trust their child to know what to say when they break a string? Go to the stringer. What kind of, know what string you use, know what you string at, so these things, I think that goes back to trustworthiness in a form of ownership, that we want to be able to trust the athletes as a coach and as a parent to take care of the things that they can do on their own. And so I love that trustworthiness is on there. Then the next one is one of my favorites. Number 4, we have gratitude, the appreciation of actions and benefits bestowed upon you. That one's huge. Teaching gratitude it will help you through life. I mean, it just, that's a huge one for me. So talk a little bit about gratitude being on this list.
Gratitude to me is really a trait that's modeled by the parents. And as the parents show gratitude, appreciation for what they have, children tend to copy that. And they are watching, they're paying attention.
Yes.
And they're listening. And so our attitude, our positive character traits or negative character traits are just going to be copied. And we see that all the time. I think it's really important for parents to understand that what you're doing is something that they're paying attention to. An example, I was just starting to train a new athlete in Florida. I was there for the first week. And at the tournament, when I'm first getting to know this family, the father, and we won't mention any names. We won't, right? But anyway, so we're on the freeway, the 95 in Florida, and it's very, very busy, right? Of course, there's a huge line of traffic trying to get off the freeway. So he goes around everybody, cuts the line, ditches in front, and then curves around the side of the road and gets in front of everybody. Well, what is he teaching his child sitting in the back seat? His 14-year-old kid is learning that rules and laws don't apply to us.
Right.
And then interestingly, when I see this kid play in the matches, he's cheating his guts out.
Oh.
Yeah, I get the umpires are calling and big war, and and I knew quickly that I got to get out of here. I'm not teaching this kid. It's a nightmare because it's nurtured. And so
that's right.
They're watching.
Absolutely, they're watching. It's like, it's always funny if on a TV show or a movie or something, the little kid will say a bad word or something, and that's because, where'd you hear that?
Yeah. Right.
Moving on, and again, I love how these all kind of build together, is accountability. We love talking about accountability. You say in the book, the condition of being responsible for your actions. So pretty self-explanatory there, but accountability, again, these themes all overlap in such a positive way. So let's talk a minute about accountability.
Well, it is the foundation, isn't it? It's the foundation of any child getting good at anything. It's their personal accountability. And we see it a lot as coaches because often in training, we're coaching, we're trying to teach something, and they hear the the words, they hear the sounds, but it's coming in their ears, but they're not really listening. It's not going into their brain. They're
Right.
not really digesting it. So then obviously we see them in a match later, and they're going right back to their old unproductive habits, and they just drift right back because they're not being accountable for understanding and buying into some of the new concepts that the coaches are trying to teach.
Yep.
And
that idea of buying in, being open-minded. Actually, I think that's on the list somewhere, but the buy-in is huge, because especially teenagers, what they know from what they've been training to the point where they are, there's a certain level of trust in what they know how to do. And if they've had a little bit of success, and then another coach or trainer wants to change something, buy-in it's huge. I mean, how do you get that player to buy in and trust you and, be accountable for, their actions on and off the court?
Part of this though is it's our fault as coaches, maybe because we're not explaining to the parents and the athletes that it does take like 4 to 6 weeks to reroute a motor program. So if you're changing mechanics in a stroke, it takes a while. If we're changing character trait habits, that might take months to reroute. So it's not easy. Right. And so, when they go back into a match and now pressure hits, they tend to default back to their old ways. So I think it's important that we see that it's going to be one of these situations where maybe they're doing something the old way 50% of the time, and they are buying into the new way 50%, which is terrific. We need to acknowledge that, and then maybe say things, look, let's see if we can get to 75% of the time you're doing your in-between point rituals correctly, and 25% of the time you're skipping them. And then we'll take it into these small little manageable goals, right?
That's so important too. And it's part of a bigger plan too, as you get to a point where you're looking at your calendar and you're choosing the tournaments you're going to play. And so you have to organize your training to perform where you want to perform at those events. And so as you look out into the future, how are you organizing your training and everything that goes into it, which goes right into our next solution is commitment, the position of being dedicated to your cause. Which, I mean, you can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out, if relating to what you want your results to be anyway.
Yeah, right on. And it's not, and it's not bad if your child plays tennis as a hobby. Right. It's fine. And play high school ball, enjoy it, socialize, have a ton of fun. That's great. But we all as coaches have issues if the athlete says with their words they want to play D1 college, but their actions are not committing to that goal, right? That long-term goal.
Right.
And so that's the key, is their words have to match their actions.
Absolutely. Next, number 7 is respectfulness. A curious regard for others' feelings or situations. I just respect is so important. And it's so interesting how things change and evolve with technology and, the ability to be in contact with anybody just about any time. And, it's and there are boundaries that come with that, as far as what time of day somebody might be trying to get in touch with you, is that respectful? Are you thinking of, your parents, your coaches, and that on each side, the coach needs to respect the parent's role too. A lot of times you'll see coaches that just don't want to have anything to do with the parent. They just want, the payment for their services. And and like you said, the modeling of that, the child is seeing that. So is the coach being respectful? Is the parent being respectful? Because the kid's watching, like you said.
Yes.
So then it's on them to be respectful. But yeah, talk a little bit about why that one is so meaningful.
Well, I feel like we should give the same respect to the janitor that as like the CEO of the corporation, and everybody deserves that kind of respect. From parents, we can teach our children that maybe when the coach is talking, they make eye contact, they hold the tennis balls, they're not bouncing balls and
yes
and looking at the trees and things like that. And I think that's meaningful, and they have a conversation about the topics that the coach is trying to deliver, and they want to make sure they buy into the topic. They're really hearing it and listening deeply. So maybe that's more of what we would call it active listening. It's different, right? When they really
when you're actually
in.
taking it in, you're absorbing it.
Yes,
it means something
we
to
can
you
see
when
it.
you hear it. Yeah. It doesn't just kind of roll over you when you really take it in and absorb it, and then it may change your mind about an action that something maybe you wish you hadn't done. I mean, I certainly, I remember, oh gosh, this is embarrassing, but I was playing a tournament and I was 16 or 17, and Sunday, it's like semifinals, and this girl, anyway, got contentious. And I was up a set and up in the second set, and I got my bags, went up to the net and shook her hand, and I was like, you can have it, I'm out. And I look back on that now and I'm like, that was not respectful. That was not the right thing to do, just because I got irritated or frustrated or whatever. And I remember my dad was at the match, and he was like, what just happened? You were up a set and you were up in the second set. What? And I was like, I went, yeah, I felt like she was cheating me. It's like every little thing.
Yeah.
I just kind of wasn't, goes back to able and willing. Am I able to get past, the cheating and the behavior, am I willing to then do what I have to do to continue and finish the match? And so I'm telling on myself by saying that's one that I would go back and I would change my actions. And so again, as these things develop, you can go, okay, I didn't handle that the best way I could have.
Yes.
In the future, I can handle this better, but I have to be able and willing to do so. And the next one, which is again so meaningful, integrity. So having a solid moral compass and principles. And again, I mean, in life and whatever you do, you hope to have integrity. It goes back to trustworthiness, accountability, commitment, all these things. If I'm working with a kid and you're in sort of a time crunch, and you might say, okay, I want you to come, I'm going to trust you to do the dynamic warm up and hit a couple of balls before, so that when you get here, we're going to go right into what we're doing. And so the integrity would be, I don't see you do it. You can tell me that you did, and I don't know. So do I, as a coach or as a parent, or can't is that integrity? Are you actually going to do it and be like, yeah, coach, now I'm ready? Or your mom asks you, do you have everything all set up, your bag, you have extra strings, and a kid might just be like, yeah, but do you? Or and so it's sort of that doing what you're supposed to do, even if nobody sees you doing it. You're still choosing to do the right thing.
It's a big part, isn't it? And when we talk about the realm of college ball and college coaching, how important is that to a coach? That's big. You're representing the school, so
That's
a
right.
moral compass,
Yes.
sportsmanship,
Yep.
not being a jerk out there and
That's right.
calling lines um, correctly.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
matters.
It matters. It
Yeah.
matters. You know,
And so we have to like confront our children if we find they're wanting to win so bad that they're applying gamesmanship in tournaments. It's up to the parents to pull the plug and maybe even pull them out of matches sometimes,
mm,
not allow it.
right.
Um, if you're allowing it, if you're observing it and not doing anything about it, you're part of the problem, really.
That's right. That's right. And that's such a hard one. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know parents that really grapple with that. You love your kid, you know, and maybe the personality on the court is different from the personality off the court. And
Sure.
so a parent then goes, wait a minute, that's not the kid I know. What's going on out there? And so it's a real dilemma for parents, you know, and do you pull them off the court? You know, you just paid the money and maybe you traveled or the time, and so are you really gonna, with all of that on the line, you know, are you gonna stand up and say, nope, pulling them, you cannot act like that? Or you go, oh, we'll talk about it after the match.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a tough one for parents, I think.
No, it is for sure.
You
But
know,
I gotta admit, it's one of the most important things you can do for your child with this whole accountability issue is
right.
you have to default them out of the tournament
Mhm.
and say, look, you get, 3 strikes with bad behavior.
Mhm.
And after the third strike, I'm pulling you out of the tournament. And it's amazing how kids straighten up.
Uh-huh. They know.
So
They know when they're acting out, you know.
yeah.
um so I'll kind of go a little bit faster through these next few because we have some other great things to talk about. But you know, you list honesty, effort, you know, innovation,
Yes.
consistency, loyalty, ethics, patience, desire, sincerity, open-mindedness. And then you finish this section saying, in the eyes of a future NCAA college coach, these character traits are equally important to your athlete's topspin backhand. And so you have to get the book to go through all the rest of them because we are going to move on to the next section.
All right, let's do it.
We could go through this and just always talk. So following that up, and we just sort of we're talking about it anyway, negative character traits.
Mm.
And so we go through another list, and I'm just gonna read these out real quick. Number one, dishonesty, confrontational, unkind. That's a huge one. You
Yeah.
know, for me, it's like if I were the coach of the college team and I am looking at a player, scouting a player, or whatever, and I see them just being unkind, that's gonna I'm just gonna move on. Like I
Yeah.
just can't have that on your team. It's like poison.
Yeah.
You know, rude, that goes right with it. Disrespectful, impatient, abrasive, pessimistic, narcissistic, obnoxious, combative. Yeah.
What a list.
Combative and unforgiving. Yeah, you know, when you look at the list that we were just going through, and then you look at this list and you go, okay, yeah, as a parent, as a coach, who would you rather have?
Yeah.
You know,
I
because
think it's meaningful too that parents be honest and maybe circle some of those traits, those destructive behaviors that maybe your child exhibits under pressure and competition. And look, the honesty is with all of these negative character traits, they're contagious. And that's why college coaches will cross your child off the list if they're showing some of these behaviors. So we're trying to help you before you even get there, because there's nothing worse than sending your kid off to college and having them say, I don't like it here. my coach isn't going to play me anymore. I hate him. He's a jerk, and I want to go to a different school in Kansas or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah, it's big.
You go on to say parents must recognize that just as the numerous positive character traits they strive to instill in their athletes, there are many negative character traits they strive to negate. And so, sorry, that's my dog. She's playing with her bone. But yeah, so like you were just saying, if a parent can look at these two lists and go,
Yeah.
and it's helpful for the parent to have a list. I mean, you would think that these ideas of honesty and integrity and respectfulness, they're like, yeah, sure, of course, that's, but are you really, and so I think as a parent to have it in front of them and go, well, how would you evaluate your child in these areas?
Yeah. I think parents assume, they speculate, they assume their kids know this stuff. But then the question really is, have you ever had this conversation with your kids? Have you talked about these topics? And, I always like preventative medicine instead of, after the fact and trying to.
But prehab.
Yeah, prehab, right on. But it's back to that exposure or avoidance. If you want to offer exposure to these things so your kids understand it. You don't want to just avoid it and pray they're going to learn it somewhere else. Right.
Because I think it is easy as a parent to say, well, of course we've talked about that, of course, but then that's why I like having these two lists. And I think it would be fun for the parent to do it without anybody around. And then what if you put the same two lists in front of the kid and say, well, you evaluate yourself, I wonder what traits, positive or negative, the player, your child, would identify with in themselves, and then maybe you compare notes. I don't know. That might be a bad idea.
No, I like the idea. I think it's always interesting for me to see different people's opinions on the same topic because, we all know when we talk about personality profiling, some people are wired very differently and they see the world differently.
Absolutely. So, and you finish this and I love how, just straightforward this is when you say avoidance does not solve the problem. As a quick aside, in the restaurant world, when I was waiting tables, when I was just starting out waiting tables, if things weren't going right, like the kitchen's putting the food out too slow, we're not getting things quickly enough, or whatever the case may be, if I have people at a table and they're unhappy, I would have a tendency, again, I'm telling myself, I would have a tendency to kind of hide, I can't fix this. The food is just not here and the bar's backed up, your drink isn't there. And so I'm just going to hide. That's one of the big things that when we talk about our service staff, for like, if you get overwhelmed, ask for help. Don't just go hide from your tables.
Yeah.
Ask for help. Prehab. Have the manager go over there and say, hey folks, I'm so sorry. The kitchen's a little bit backed up right now, but it's coming, may I bring you an appetizer to snack on in the meantime, so that's like a prehab versus just things are kind of going down. And so I'm just going to go hide in the back. You can't do that. So avoidance does not fix the problem. So our next section is psychosomatic dramas. I really had to kind of think on this one as I was reading. The thing that stood out to me most is the coping strategies. When you have these psychosomatic dramas, what can you have to find a way to cope, whether it's something simple as breathing, take a minute and let's bring your heart rate down, let's cool off for a second. But whatever the coping strategy may be, I think is interesting, because I've seen psychosomatic dramas. We've seen this in juniors and adults. I mean, it happens. So the way you describe it in the book, you say, this condition involves feelings of physical symptoms, usually lacking a clear medical explanation. And you go on to say, by inventing problems, they temporarily get to avoid actual vulnerability. And that's what really kind of cemented it for me. It's like, oh, you're inventing these problems, but it's avoiding your actual vulnerability. And so I just thought that was a really big one to bring up. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about these dramas and how to cope. And I want to know how to say this word correctly. Is it atelophobia? You list atelophobia is
yes,
the actual fear of flaws. And I was like, oh, I did not know that there was an actual phobia.
Yes. I looked it up. I didn't know either.
I was like, that is not that it's great to have this problem, but it's like, it's great to be able to identify what the problem may be. And that goes hand in hand with you list fear of failure and perfectionism, which we see every single day.
Yes.
And across the board, and so atelophobia, I hope I'm saying that right. The actual fear of flaws, it can lead into a fear of competition entirely. And, so again, sure, if you don't deal with it and it continues to escalate, then you could really find yourself in a tough spot where now you're afraid to compete at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. I see it all the time too, and it's something that's very fixable. But a lot of times with athletes, they really feel that if they give 100% of themselves, if they give 100% effort in their preparation for matches, if they give 100% in matches and they fail, it's all on them. But if they can preset a problem or a sickness or an injury before the match, now if they fail, they have something to blame. So it's blame shifting, right, with psychology.
Absolutely. Yes, that's all, blame really shifting for sure. I mean, yeah, the one memory that really came to mind when I was thinking about this is there was a lady. I was actually traveling with a adult team, and we'd gone down to Mobile and we're playing, and we're sitting at dinner, and I'm sitting next to this lady, and she seems fine. She'd won her match that morning, and we're going into the next day. We're talking about the lineups. I'm going to put her in singles, and she said, well, I really hope I don't get a migraine. And I was like, well, do you feel a migraine coming on? And she said, well, no, not right now, but I'm just worried that I might have a migraine. And I was like, well, do you have something you can do to avoid this? And I said, okay, let's just sleep on it. We'll see how you feel in the morning. So in the morning, go to her. I'm like, how are you feeling? Because I can put somebody else in, if you're getting a migraine, if you feel one coming on, let me put somebody else in, and so you can take care of it. And she was like, no, I'll be fine. But then, like you said, she loses the match, she comes off, and she's like, that migraine was just killing me, and I was like, well, was it? Was it?
So
really?
it's not just for kids, right? We know it's, but yeah, I think it was meaningful that you had her attempt, and that's one of the big keys from parents is we have to, when we hear these things, like, I don't know if I can play. I'll give you an example too with a little story. I was in Israel at a pro tournament, and I was with a younger player, and before the first round, he comes to me the night before, same kind of concept. My elbow's hurting so bad. I don't think I can play. I can't serve. My arm hurts. And so, of course, my response was, we flew all the way to Israel. let's just wake up in the morning and see how you feel.
Right.
And of course, in the morning, my arm hurts. So then I would respond, okay, let's just go and just try to warm up a tiny bit. So he would warm up some, my arm hurts. Let's just try to play 2 games. If you could play 2 games of the first match, if it still hurts, you can quit.
Right.
Turns out he plays two games. He realizes that the opponent was not even as good as he was. He wins that round. He wins 2 more rounds. Then, by the end of that week, he's ranked, I think, 900 on the tour. He never even had a ranking. But if he would have followed this psychosomatic false injury, he would have just flown home.
Right.
And so anyway, it's common.
Yes. And again, as from the parent's perspective, if they start to see a pattern of this, again, trying to identify this as a pattern and if your shoulder's been bothering you, have you been stretching? Have you iced your shoulder, or are you doing things to cope, or or are you just letting it happen? And so again, that's a big part of the job description for a parent to do this. So moving on, parental stressors. So left unattended, parental stress can have a very negative impact on your athlete's mental health and performance ability. Yes.
Yes.
Let's expand on that a little.
Yeah, great. Your mental health as the parent, right? It's obviously we talked about modeling already, and your energy, even though you might be saying certain words, your tone of voice or your body language might be saying something otherwise, right? So your energy plays a big role. So we have to kind of pay attention to what stresses us out as parents, and then learn how to cope with that too. Avoidance, like if you get stressed with traffic, you might want to leave early. That's all. Right. It's just simple things like that, right?
Again, if you're following on in the book, we're now on page 83, and there's 3 groups of stressors for the parental stressors. Again, we won't go through them all, but you've divided them into organizational stressors, match day stressors, and then personal stressors. And I think that pretty much covers all of the stressors. It really does. So as a parent, you start looking at all these things, and so they need help too, and I love how when you finish this section, you actually talk about, the parents, if you're feeling so burdened or sorry, that was the dog, what to do. And you're like, take time away, reconnect with a non-tennis friend, just be normal.
Have a normal life.
So I just think as a parent, how they handle the stressors that are ever present. Again, the athlete's watching, and hopefully the parent and the coach and the athlete can be on the same page about, okay, we know these things are there. We know these stressors are there. So what are we going to do? Again, the idea of like a prehab or a coping skill. What are we going to do knowing that these stressors are there? It's kind of like you've been doing it long enough. If somebody's just starting out or done it a long time, you are able to identify what those stressors are and what are the ones that trigger you. And just to be aware, the awareness.
Yeah, I think that's a big key. And it's, look, you don't have to watch every practice. Right. You don't have to hang on the fence and help coach. Right. You do have to know what's going on, and you do want to communicate with your child's coach, because after all, you are the weekend coach most of the time. You're the one taking your kids to the matches. But it's also really important that you don't show stress or worry about the outcome.
Right.
If your pep talk is involving things like, look, you're going to beat a pusher today, and if you can play a pusher and beater, you're going to get the college scholarship, and your UTR ranking is going to go to here if you don't blow it, and we spent $2,000 to get you here to this tournament. If you think that's motivating your kid, it's not. You're scaring the heck out of your kid.
Right.
So it's really big that we just talk about performance goals.
That's right.
You know, and if you do know a little bit about the game, you could even talk about things like opponent profiling if you know a little bit about the opponent and maybe what to avoid and things like that. But those are performance related topics. They're not outcome topics.
Yep.
If you're talking about the outcome, they're stressed about the outcome.
Yep.
And if they're stressed about the outcome, they're not going to perform well. So that's big.
That's right. That one, what you just said is sort of at the heart of the matter, you know. So
yeah.
Kind of coming full circle here, the next section, thriving versus suffering. So we go back to that initial idea of chapter 6. And this is page 85, but you know, software subjects to discuss. And so again, having an open line of communication that you can feel okay telling the truth. You can really not just say what you're supposed to say, not just say what, you know, is expected as a response, but really actually sitting down and identifying these things and how it will, like you said, affect performance. So a couple of these things, I'm just going to go through a few here. Number one, frustration tolerance, like check, you know, focus ability. You know, I had a player that needed, I think it was Adderall or one of those for ADD or ADHD. And the mom, this kid was younger. So, and the mom was like, I can't believe I forgot to give him his, you know, medicine, you know? And so, and it really was, this was not psychosomatic, like it did affect his ability to focus. And so again, you know, having those routines that you do before matches, you know, when that should be part of it, obviously, you know. But moving on, you know, seek growth, conquer fear, confidence, effort, sacrifice, a sense of gratitude, innate ability to fight. I like that one. Courage, optimism, leadership, and ability to suffer. So just pick a few of those, and like I said, we don't have time today to go through them all as much as I'd love to. Let's just pick a few that stand out to you from this list.
Okay. Well, these are software essentials, right? So we talk about the hardware is strokes and athleticism, and software is mental and emotional, and parents can educate software.
That's right.
And so frustration tolerance, obviously, when we see the kids that thrive in tournament competition, they can handle it. They can handle frustrations, and little things don't bother them. The kids that lose early are the ones that are upset about almost everything.
Right.
And I think it does boil down to sometimes perfectionism traits.
Absolutely.
It's important, I think, that parents and children, they know that even the top athletes in the world are not perfect.
Right.
So like IBM Watson does all the stats now with every pro match, and in a fiscal year, I think it's important that children and parents know that, like Roger Federer, a few years back, he won 54% of all the points he played that year. Novak won 53%. Rafa won 55. That's it.
Right.
Yeah. These are the players
like,
that are winning like $18 million a year in prize money. And the players that are winning only a measly 3 million a year. They're not winning 50. They're winning like 48%, maybe
Yeah.
50%. It's
Right.
very small fractions. 50%, you win 3
Right.
million. 53%, you're winning 18 million. But they're not perfect. They're not winning 100%.
Right.
So,
Like I've said to kids in the past that again, the fear of competition, fear of failure, perfectionism.
yeah.
I mean, I had a girl that, she's up a set and like down a break in the second set, and she just starts crying. She just falls apart. And I'm like, no, that's heartbreaking. I mean, it's hard to, as a parent, as a coach, to see that. That's
Yeah.
part of, conquering fear and those things. But, you say by understanding and applying these software essentials, your athlete will thrive under the typical game day stress of competition. And that really, how do you thrive? And it goes back to what we were just talking about, optimism versus pessimism.
Yeah.
If you're winning, but you played a bad couple of points, and so now it's just everything is terrible. Yeah. And so how you can stay in the moment. And yeah, I mean, if a match was played out of 100 points, 100 points total, how many do you need to win? 51. That means you can lose 49 and still win.
Yeah.
you know so yeah, no, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, I think it's all part of this journey. It's part of the parents understanding that life skills do matter, and parents should be a part of the tennis journey. We obviously, not only are you paying the bills, but we want to be a part of our child's life.
Yeah.
It's really important. We should be involved, but there's certain job descriptions that we should focus on, and there's also maybe job descriptions that the coaches should be focusing on. And knowing your job description is going to help the harmony of the entourage.
Yep.
The relationship between parent, athlete, and coach, and that really does make the journey so much more fun when everybody understands the job, and it helps everybody. It helps the coach tremendously if the athletes have these life skills.
Right.
Because they're going to come through under pressure. They're going to handle pressure. They're going to be leaders. So anyway, the book, that's what it's designed. The whole book is designed so parents can just take a quick peek into their job descriptions and hopefully help the process instead of hurt the process.
Absolutely. Well, Frank, I just I always enjoy when we can talk and going through this book is fantastic. So if you're new here, if this is your first one, please know that we've been going through chapter by chapter, and you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you find your podcast. We're on iTunes and SoundCloud. So there's more good stuff that we've already done, and we're looking forward to the next chapters as well. So Frank, once again, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and feel free to share this with any other parents that might be struggling along their journey.
That's right.
All righty.
Yep. Thank you, Frank. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye.